Good day, Kavibal, and welcome to our Learn at Home learning session. For the discussion today, the topic will be on Understanding Global Citizenship Education in the Philippines. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you're registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions in the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, Kavibal? And now, to proceed with our webinar this evening, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. Si Eldrin Jan Cabillin ay guro ng Araling Panlipunan sa St. Mary's Academy, Pasay. Kabilang siya sa Internal Quality Auditor at Strategic Plan Committee Student Services ng nasabing paaralan. Nagtapos siya sa pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila at nabigyan ng pagkakataong makapag-aral sa Genesis 2.0 Social Community Course sa Japan sa ilalim ng National Youth Commission of the Philippines at Japan International Cooperation Center noong taong 2015. May malawak siyang karanasan sa pagtuturo at pagsasalita patungkol sa edukasyon, kultura, kasarian at humanidades. Kamakailan lang ay nagtapos siya ng Master ng Sining sa Araling Filipino, Wika, Kultura at Media sa Pamantasang De La Salle, Maynila at ginawaran ng Most Outstanding Masteral Thesis ng Departamento. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Eldrin Jan Cabillin.
Maraming salamat, Vibal. Good evening, Luzon, Visayas and Mindanao, and even across the borders. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Thank you for welcoming me back here in the loop to discuss pertinent topic about our present educational character. To all our viewers, our parents, guardians, teachers, and students, I hope you can pick up to harvest something in tonight's discussion. Of course, this webinar will not be possible without the undying effort of Vibal Group. Kaya sa Vibal, maraming salamat sa inyo. Join us in this half an hour discussion. Do not forget to like and share the Vibal page, the Vibal Facebook page, and of course, our discussion video for tonight, so that together we can hashtag LearnAs1PH and hashtag Learn at Home. For tonight, our topic is entitled Understanding Global Citizenship Education in the Philippines. I know most of our educators are aware of what is global citizenship education is all about, or what we call the GCED. It so happened na hindi lang natin binibigyan ng branding, hindi lang natin binibigyan ng pagpapangalan, na ang mga ginagawa pala natin, what we do, what we implement both in the curricular and co-curricular offerings in our school talks about or in line to what is the call of global citizenship education. And so that is what we are going to discuss this evening. So for the flow of our discussion, here's the flow of our discussion for tonight. First, I will be presenting to you the foundation or the root why global citizenship education was created. What's the purpose? What it is for? And second, of course, I'm going to dwell and give you a clear image of what global citizenship education is all about, or what we call the GCED, towards its ultimate goal, which is to make our learners what we call global citizen. And so, we're going to discuss the three core conceptual dimensions of global citizenship education and the different key learning outcomes and attributes that we wanted to see and to manifest among our 21st century learners. Right? And of course, we're going to discuss also this evening the global citizenship education in the context of Philippine educational system. And as we go on in our discussion for tonight, hopefully you will have a reflection on your mind na ito palang mga dinidiscuss ko ngayong gabi ay mga bagay na naisa sa buhay, naisa sa gawa at nai-implement na namin sa aming mga kanya-kanyang paaralan, pampubliko man o pamprivado. Okay? So let us start our discussion. First, we all know that the United Nations as an international organization is steadfast in it, the United Nations is steadfast in spearheading development and innovation in all aspects of our life, whether it is political, economic, social, cultural. They are very much into the creation of different programs that will help to develop each country. And so, one of the tools that the United Nations see as a catalyst in order to improve the way of improve the quality of our life is through education. That's why the United Nations Global Education First Initiative notes it is not enough for education to produce individuals who can read, write, and count. Right? So when we talk about reading, writing, and counting, this talks about literacy. And if you still remember, when we talk about literacy, this in particular is one of the goal of the United Nations to improve among our learners all throughout the world. Now, education must fully assume its central role in helping people to forge more just, peaceful, tolerant, and inclusive society. And because of that, the United Nations has created a long-term plan. They have created a long-term plan, an operational plan in order for the different countries all throughout the world to address the different issues pertaining to the educational system or the educational setup. And so they have crafted what we call the Education 2030 Agenda and Framework for Action, wherein this long-term plan starting this year up to 2030, it particularly aims to mobilize all stakeholders around the new global education goal and targets and proposes way of implementing, coordinating, financing, and reviewing the 2030 education agenda. On what scale? Nationally, regionally, and globally. Two, guarantee equal educational opportunity for all. So if we're going to look at the Education 2030 agenda and framework for action of the United Nations, it is standing on what particular point of view? The point of view of EFA or the education for all, wherein it wanted or it aims to guarantee equal educational opportunity for all. And so it also look at the different ways on how we can help to shape our educational practices in every nation all throughout the world. And so apart from the Education 2030 agenda, isa pa sa binuong pamantayan ng United Nations is the Millennium Development Goal, which was introduced to us in year 2000. Right? They introduced to us in year 2000 the MDG or the Millennium Development Goal, wherein there are set or enumerated goals by the United Nations that each country must look into and consider to take some action for the continuous development of all aspects of our living, from political, social, economic, so on and so forth. And after that Millennium Development Goal, after 15 years, they have introduced in 2015 a new set of goals, which we call as the SDG or the Sustainable Development Goals. Why? Because after the MDG, for the for the past 15 years, we see some development. We see some improvement. And from that particular development and improvement, it is now the goal of the United Nations to sustain it. And so they have enumerated the 17 SDG or the Sustainable Development Goals. And for tonight, in among these 17 SDG, we are going to focus on SDG number 4, which is all about quality education. Actually, if you are familiar with the MDG, if you are familiar with the MDG, this what you can see now on the SDG are all the developed goals that we had in the past 15 years. So before, during the MDG, dun sa Millennium Development Goal, ang tinitignan lang o ang goal lang ng United Nations ay para sa mga mag-aaral na makapagbasa, makapagsulat at makapagbilang. But this time, after 15 years, they want to sustain it by having quality education among all learners all throughout the world. And if you look at the SDG number 4, which is quality education, madami pa siyang mga nasa ilalim, no? Mga sub-themes under quality education. And part of which is 4.7, states that we must ensure that all learners are provided with the knowledge and skills to promote sustainable development, including, among others, through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. And from that, one of the very key that the United Nations, particularly of UNESCO, in order to take the call of action to that challenge is by creating the GCED, or what we call the GCED, or what we call the Global Citizenship Education. So yun ang pinaka-pinagmulan bakit meron tayong Global Citizenship Education, because of the SDG goal number 4 from the United Nations. And what is the penultimate goal of the Global Citizenship Education? Of course, to make our learners globally citizen, to make them a global citizen. And when we said global citizen, we refer them to have a sense of belonging to a broader community and a common humanity. Mahalaga yon na ang bawat isa sa atin ay mayroong pakikibahagi sa lipunan, sa komunidad na ginagalawan natin. And when we talk about community, from the word community, we can have the root word commune. Kailangan may pakikiisa tayo. Maliban sa pakikibahagi, mahalaga yung pakikiisa natin sa lipunang ginagalawan natin. In what way? It emphasizes political, economic, social, and cultural interdependency and interconnectedness between the local, the national, and the global scale. That is why in the first part of my discussion in the Learn at Home, I discussed to you all about culture-based education. Why? Because it is a necessity for us to first consider our very own. Doon muna tayo sa pinanggalingan natin, sa ugat natin. Nang sa ganon, mas magiging makabuluhan yung pakikibahagi natin sa national level up to the global level. Okay? And so, that is what in particular the aim of what we call the GCED, or the Global Citizenship Education. All right? So let's look at global citizenship education using these 3 particular definition from UNESCO. Right? So let's have the first one. Global citizenship education aims to be transformative. So I know most of our public and private educational institutions are all geared towards transformative education. All right? How? When you design both your curricular and co-curricular activities, you are of course taking into consideration the knowledge, the skills, values, and attitudes that you want to develop and that you want your learners to acquire that will help them to be able to contribute to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful world. Kaya nga 'di ba, in our curriculum offerings or in our setup specifically during the in-person face-to-face last school year, na backward tayo ng kaunti, last school year, mini-mainstream na natin yung mga deaf students sa normal setup or sa normal classroom. Why? Because the character of our educational system now that we are in the 21st century we are now in the 21st century is highly transformative. And so we are then in in consideration to the aim and goals of global citizenship education. Second, global citizenship education takes a multifaceted approach. When we said multifaceted approach, we are looking at the horizontal and the vertical articulation and the different themes that we can integrate on a particular discipline or subject area. Right? Mahalaga yon. Hindi kailangan nagbubukas tayo o binubuksan natin yung isang disiplina sa isa pang panibagong disiplina. So in short, the horizontal and the vertical articulation as we integrate it in the delivery of instruction, it's very important. Why? Because here we are employing concepts and methodologies that are already applied in other areas. Say for example, human rights education, peace education, education for sustainable development, and education for international understanding and aims to advance their common objectives. So very important yon. And I know for a fact that every area, no, subject area in an educational institution are really trying their very best to touch in or look into a multifaceted approach, particularly a multifaceted topic that will help the department or the area to fulfill its goals and objectives. And so, na-observe na natin, meron na talaga tayo ng konsepto ng global citizenship education. The third one, global citizenship education applies a lifelong learning perspective. And of course, this is one of the aims and goals of the Department of Education here in the Philippines. All our Filipino learners should acquire meaningful and lifelong learning. Paano nila magagawa yon? Beginning from early childhood and continuing through all levels of education and into adulthood, requiring both formal and informal approaches, curricular and extracurricular interventions, and conventional and unconventional pathways to participation. Kaya nga, when we were asked to create our performance tasks every quarter, we of course consider that our performance tasks will be valid and will be meaningful not only at the present period of their life, but it is something that they can carry as they go along the process of development. Diba? Mula ngayon hanggang sa mga susunod pang panahon ng kanilang buhay, that's how we write our objectives. That's how we wanted them to perform that particular task or that particular performance task on a quarter in a certain learning area. And so we are already touching to the aims of lifelong learning perspective under the global citizenship education. Kaya if you're going to ask me, meron ba tayong global citizenship education na sinusunod dito sa Pilipinas? It's a resounding yes. Yun nga lang, hindi lang natin binibigyan ng branding, ng pangalan, na itong mga ginagawa natin, ini-implement natin in our curricular and co-curricular activities are already in the fulfillment of what we call the global citizenship education. Okay? Now, let's look at the three core conceptual dimensions of global citizenship education. It has the three domains of learning, namely the cognitive, socio-emotional, and the behavioral dimension. I know for our teachers, alam na alam natin what is cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral. I'll just have a quick refresher course on these three core conceptual dimensions of the global citizenship education. First, cognitive. Of course, when we said cognitive, we refer to the knowledge and thinking skills that are necessary to better understand the world and its complexities. And so, if we are to align it and look at our setup, our curriculum offerings here in the Philippines, saan natin makikita yung cognitive dimension na yan ng global citizenship education? Anong column sa ating curriculum? That can be, that is articulated under the content standard of our curriculum. Okay? Aside from the content standard, of course, the list of the essential topics that is targeting the first core conceptual dimension, which is cognitive. Next, how about the socio-emotional? So when we said socio-emotional, we are talking about the values, attitudes, and social skills that enable learners to develop effectively, psychosocially, and physically to enable them to live together with others respectfully and peacefully. And so we are touching the emotional aspect or the affective aspect of our learners under the socio-emotional. And the third one, the third core conceptual dimension of GCED is behavioral, wherein we are looking at the conduct, performance, practical application, and engagement of our learners. And this is the very goal of the K-12 curriculum, wherein we are following the OBE style or the output-based education, wherein we demand at the end of every quarter a particular authentic task that they conducted, performed, and applied. Okay? And when we look at or when we align it to our curriculum here in the Philippines, saan naman natin makikita ang core conceptual dimension na behavioral sa curriculum natin? Anong column? That is articulated under the performance standard column of our curriculum. Right? Nandoon naman yan sa performance standard. And so, these three core conceptual dimensions are all readily available in our curriculum here in the Philippines. They are all reflected. Why? Because there is the combination of the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes. At saan naman natin yun makikita sa curriculum natin? Anong column yon? That can be articulated under the LC or the learning competency. No? Yung pinagsama-samang cognitive, socio-emotional, and behavioral dimension na kinakailangan i-target sa mga mag-aaral natin, that is reflected under the learning competency column of our curriculum. And in our case, for this school year, in-enhance, hindi binago, kundi in-enhance ng departamento ang learning competency at binigyan ito ng pangalang most essential learning competencies. Okay? So, you see, we are then adhering to the call of global citizenship education. Now, under this three core conceptual dimension, there are different indicators or standards that the learners must produce or must manifest. So under the cognitive, these are the key learning outcomes or the KLO. First, learners acquire knowledge and understanding of local, national, and global issues and the interconnectedness and interdependency of different countries and populations. Two, learners develop skills for critical thinking and analysis. Next, under the key learning outcomes ng socio-emotional, these are the indicators. First, learners experience a sense of belonging to a common humanity, sharing values and responsibilities based on human rights. Learners develop attitudes for empathy, solidarity, and respect for differences and diversity. And the key learning outcomes on their behavioral are as follows. First, learners act effectively and responsibly at local, national, and global levels for a more peaceful and sustainable world. Learners develop motivation and willingness to take necessary actions. So if we're going to plot it, ganitong itsura niyan, no? Kung ang pag-uusapan ay alignment principle, naka-align ang core conceptual dimension na cognitive, socio-emotional and behavior sa kani-kanilang mga KLO or key learning outcomes or indicators that we want to see or that we want to see to ours from our students. Okay? And if these key learning outcomes are all manifested and acquired by our learners, then they have a particular attribute. We call them to this generalized attribute. Under the core conceptual dimension na cognitive, kapag lahat ng ito ay na-achieve ng ating mga mag-aaral, we call them to be informed and critically literate. If all of these key learning outcomes under the socio-emotional dimension, then our learners are called to be socially connected and respectful of diversity. And if all these key learning outcomes are developed under the core conceptual dimension na behavior, then our learners are called to be ethically responsible and engaged. Okay? So let's look at the criterion kung paano natin masasabi ng isang mag-aaral ay informed and critically literate. First, they know about local, national, and global issues, governance systems, and structures. Two, understand the interdependence and connection of global and local concerns. And three, develop skills for critical inquiry and analysis. And so, the UNESCO has recommended topics in order to attain this attribute under the core conceptual dimension, which is cognitive. So first, local, national, and global systems and structures. Kaya to those araling panlipunan teachers, news sharing is still important even if we are in the new normal education or even if we are in wired learning, we are in a virtual face-to-face instruction. Mahalaga pa rin ang balitaan sa atin. And not just simply news sharing, but there should be an analysis to the news. So mahalaga rin yung news analysis. Number two topic that was recommended by the UNESCO is issues affecting interaction and connectedness of communities at local, national, and global levels. And third, the underlying assumptions and power dynamics. Next, these are the key learner attributes under socially connected and respectful for diversity. So ano yung mga dapat nating makita sa mag-aaral natin? Number one, cultivate and manage identities, relationships, and feeling of belongingness. Two, share values and responsibilities based on human rights. And three, develop attitude to appreciate and respect differences and diversity. And so UNESCO has recommended the following topics in order to answer this particular attribute, socially connected and respectful of diversity. Number four, different levels of identity. That is why in the K-12 curriculum, particularly in the senior high school, part of the core subjects offering is the subject personality development, because that is a call, no, that's one of the good subject to to answer this particular attribute. Number 5, different communities people belong to and how these are connected. Another core subject in the senior high school is the UCSP, or Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics. And number 6, difference and respect for diversity. Next, on the key learner attributes for our students to be ethically responsible and engaged, these are the following criterion. Number 1, enact appropriate skills, values, beliefs, and attitudes. Next, demonstrate personal and social responsibility for a peaceful and sustainable world. And last, develop motivation and willingness to care for the common good. Kaya yung mga performance tasks natin ng mga media advocacy, mga um, advocacy campaign, these are all good performance tasks. And just see to it that it is authentic in nature. Why? Because it helps us to address the concern of global citizenship education. And with that, we are targeting this particular key learner attribute na maging ethically responsible and engaged ang ating mga mag-aaral. Okay? So what are the suggested topics? Ito yung mga sinabi ko sa inyo. Yung mga pinagagawa nating advocacy plan, media advocacy, ano pa ba? Advocacy campaign. So this helps us towards the development of this particular attribute. So first, number 7, actions that can be taken individually and collectively, ethically responsible behavior, and getting engaged and taking action. Mahalaga yon, no? Yung pakikibahagi nila sa ating lipunang ginagalawan, particular sa mga isyong umuusbong sa kanya-kanyang nayon, sa kanya-kanyang lunan o lugar. Okay? And if we look at the alignment principle of what I have discussed to you, ganito ang itsura nun. No? So, if you wanted to pursue a research study about global citizenship education, an action research that talks about global citizenship education, or you want to design or you want to align your curriculum offerings using in the principle of global citizenship education, then this one that I am presenting to you right now is a very good material. Okay? I caught it in from the UNESCO material. So ganyan 'yon. Kitang-kita yung alignment para ma-achieve natin yung core conceptual dimension, yung key learning outcomes, yung key learner attributes, at ano yung mga particular na topic na bibigyang pansin niyo. No? If you want to dwell more about it, pwede nyo pa siyang bigyan ng mga sub-themes or subtopics out of this suggested one or standards or indicators that were given to us by UNESCO. Okay? Now, the question is, can we still pursue global citizenship education even if we are in the new normal? Yes. Isang malakas na yes, a resounding yes. And one of the best one that I can share to you is what the Vibal group has created, which is the Learn at Home kit, wherein they believe that the new now of learning experience can be safely enjoyed in the convenience of our own spaces. No? Bakit? It answers the call of global citizenship education because it covers topics from English, Filipino, Araling Panlipunan, Science, and Mathematics. And this is something that will be helpful for parents and facilitators in monitoring the child's learning progress. And as what I have mentioned with you a while ago, during the initial discussion to you of the core conceptual dimensions, kitang-kita sa curriculum natin yung tatlong pagpapahalaga o pagbibigay pansin doon sa ating core conceptual dimension. And so, the Learn at Home kit that Vibal Group has created for us to enjoy and to utilize, these are all aligned to the DepEd K-12 curriculum and is in conformance to the aims and objectives of global citizenship education. And the very good news para sa ating mga magulang na nanonood ngayong gabi, this is free and readily available in the cloud for you to utilize. This is available in both print and digital version. And if you want to know more and have more of the Learn at Home kits that Vibal Group has prepared for us, specifically the academic book, you can contact Vibal Group to know more and to purchase their Learn at Home kit, especially yung buong package ng kanilang binuo para sa ating mga magulang at sa ating mga guro. No? Isa ito sa magandang halimbawa ng material that really conforms to the call of global citizenship education. The question is, do we conform to the standards of promoting global citizenship education in our very own educational system here in the Philippines? Again, it's a resounding yes. Simula kanina, paulit-ulit ako, yung mga ginagawa natin, hindi natin namamalayan, both the curricular and co-curricular offerings that we have are all in conformance to the aims and objectives of global citizenship education. And it's high time for us to give it a name. Bigyan natin ng branding. And maybe a high time for us to also include as a standard in our curriculum designs. No? So, bakit ko nasabing yes? Because even UNESCO has affirmed to that. On their study in the Philippines, the K-12 curriculum introduced in the 2012 or 2013 academic year draws in particular on learning to live together. It takes a whole person approach with an emphasis on effective communication skills as well as media and information literacy. Values education, which is the direct relevance to global citizenship education, includes themes such as self-worth, harmony with other people, love of country, and global solidarity. Kaya huwag tayong matakot na maging bahagi ang global citizenship education sa ating mga curriculum designs, no? And it's about time that we give it branding. We give a brand name na ito palang ginagawa natin ay bahagi ng panawagan ng GCED. Okay? And in order for us to achieve global citizenship education in the Philippines, of course, it has to be from the micro level to the macro level, from micro scale to macro scale. And this is the same paradigm that I utilize in my culture-based education discussion. No? Mahalaga yon. Magsisimula tayo sa pagsasakonteksto at ang bahagi ng pagsasakonteksto ay nasa dalawang pamamaraan, localization and indigenization. So, it's very important that we look it that we first focus on the micro level before as we go on yielding results towards macro level. And with that, as we push through the call of global citizenship education in our country, we are also of great help and tool in the fulfillment of DepEd's aim for us, na ang ating mga mag-aaral ay maging makadiyos, makakalikasan, makatao at makabansa. So we are hitting a lot of things as we integrate, as we mainstream global citizenship education in our curriculum design. Okay? And now, these are some of the teaching and learning practices na pwede nating alam ko na nagagawa na ninyo. You have been using it. These are suggestions from Evans M. et al. On their study mapping the global dimensions of citizenship education. Okay? So ito yung mga pwede natin at mga posible nating ma-implement even if we are in the new normal setup. Number 1, nurture a respectful, inclusive, and interactive classroom and school ethos. Very important ito. It's about time that we give voice to our students. So as a teachers, we have to think of a lot of possibilities, a lot of engagements that they will voice out their experiences, what's in their mind, so on and so forth. Very important yun, no? Yung pagbibigay natin ng opportunity na magsalita at magtanong sila at makibahagi sila sa isyong panlipunan natin o kung anumang issue yan, panlipunan, pampolitika, pangkultura at anumang aspeto ng pamumuhay natin, very important yon, no? For example, at the start of the year, yung pagbuo ng rules and regulation na sila ang bumuo, it's already a call of global citizenship education. It's already a call to global citizenship education. Why? We respect the inclusivity and the inclusivity of our setup. So example, the gender equality, inclusion, shared understanding of classroom norms, student voice, seating arrangements, use of space, di ba? During the in-person face-to-face instruction, hindi na tayo, wala na, luma na yun. Napaglumaan na ng panahon na, pag row 1 ang mag-aaral, mga matatalino, di ba? Hindi na uso ngayon yun. Panahon pa ni Jose Rizal sa Ateneo, yun yung elementarya siya, na lahat ng nasa harapan ay mga mistiso at silang mga Pilipinong Indio ay nasa dulo. We are not doing that anymore. Why? Because we are celebrating already the diversity of our students inside our classroom. And now that we are in the virtual space or we are using a particular virtual platform, very important pa rin na sineselebrate pa rin natin yung pagkakaiba-iba nila. Okay? Next, infuse learner-centered and culturally responsive, independent, and interactive teaching and learning approaches that align with learning goals. Very important, teachers, nasa sa atin ito, na kapag bumuo tayo ng mga learning activities natin sa ating mga mag-aaral, number 1, aside sa pagiging learner-centered, number 2, our materials should be culturally responsive also. So mahalaga yung pagsasalukal ng mga materyales na ginagamit natin. Why? Because with that, we are of course taking into consideration what we have, yung sa atin mismo. So napakahalaga nun. Number 3, embed authentic task. Of course, when we do our performance task, remember when we said performance task, it's the culmination of all the learning competencies that we have. So ito yung pinagsama-samang lahat ng mga core conceptual dimension. Yung knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes na na-acquire ng isang mag-aaral sa isang buong markahan, sa isang buong semestre, in the case of senior high school. So it's the culmination. So kailangan maipakita doon yung authenticity that they conduct it, they perform it by which means by of course taking into consider different multifaceted topics. For example, you are talking about peace education, human rights, so on and so forth, no? One of the good example na nakita ko ay yung mga organic stories na kung saan mula sa kwento ng mga kababaihan na kababaihang nagpupursige sa gawaing pang-ekonomiya sa lipunan natin, bumuo sila ng exhibition, no? Bumuo sila ng virtual exhibit mula doon sa organic stories nila o mga kwento ng buhay nila para maipakita kung paano sila naging paano nila pinagpapatuloy ang hamon ng buhay na nasasadlak tayo sa suliraning dahil sa pandemya. So it's an authentic task. And with that, you are also celebrating the different cultures. We are celebrating gender with that particular example. Kaya nga sabi ko sa inyo, yung mga media advocacy plan, mga advocacy campaign, these are all good, authentic tasks. Next, draw on globally oriented learning resources that help learners in understanding how they fit in the local world in relation to their local circumstances. Again, babalik tayo sa culture-based education. In order for us to achieve this, kailangan contextualisado. We contextualize our teaching materials, our strategies, our art of questioning to our students. And after that, in order to attain contextualization, dalawang forma, localization and indigenization. With that, we are developing among our 21st century learners two things. They are thinking locally they are they are sorry they are acting locally, and second, they are thinking globally. So napakahalaga nun, no? Yung pagsasabuhay nila ng sariling atin, at ikalawa, pag-iisip na malawak, na ang scale ay on a global scale. So we can do that, and we can do the teachers with our IMs, art of questioning, and our strategies. And last, use learners and their families as a teaching and learning resource, especially in multicultural environment. Napakaganda nito. I remember my grade 5 Makabayan Hekasi teacher, during our topic of Japanese occupation, may invited human resource, isang lola na nakaranas at nakasaksi sa panahon ng pananakop ng mga Hapones. Ginamit niya 'yon bilang teaching learning resource. So kung meron kayong mga sa klase ninyo, magulang na abogado, doktor, na maaaring makapagbahagi sa mga gawaing ginagawa ninyo, marketing consultant, so on and so forth, na magiging bahagi sa pagtatamo ng inyong objectives of your learning competency, why not use them? They are the perfect example of a teaching and learning resource. And with that, we are celebrating the multicultural environment using them as a teaching resource. Okay, so I guess this is the last slide on our discussion for tonight. And before we end our discussion, I'd like to leave these beautiful words. I'd like to leave and share these beautiful words from the research of Dr. Roberto Javier from De La Salle Psychology Department. Sabi niya, kailangang hagilapin at hanapin sa ating karanasan at kalinangan ang kahulugan ng ating sarili. Ito ay maiaambag sa pagsulong ng kaisipang Pilipino. Buo ang ating paniniwala na ang pagsusulong ng malapit sa kalooban ang siyang nagpapatibay sa ating pagkatao. Very important yun. For our students to act locally and think globally, we have to develop them from micro level towards the macro level. And with that, maraming salamat. Thank you very much sa lahat ng mga nakatutok sa ating ngayong gabi, sa lahat ng mga kavibal natin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Do you have any last reminders to our viewers for tonight?
Do not be afraid to integrate global citizenship education in your curriculum design. This is something that we have to work on. This is something that we have to continue to implement and integrate in our curricular and co-curricular activity. At kagaya ng sinabi ni Dr. Roberto Javier, mahalaga ang pagkilala natin sa ating sarili upang mas makilala natin ang malawak na aspeto ng ating buhay o ng mundong ating ginagalawan. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
There we have it. In behalf of Vibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this very eye-opening and insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, sir. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Don't forget to register to get your e-certificate of participation. The link is in the caption of this webinar. We also encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Vival Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.